Awesome. All right, welcome everyone. And where we're picking up today is on page 62. And we're right at the very first full paragraph on page 62. And Vivian and I were talking about where we were leaving off. And it's like, oh boy, everyone's favorite. We can't wait to hear about this. Selfishness, self-centeredness. Oh no. We just got here and already we're getting called out. Rude. I mean, not you guys, but this little alcoholic for surezies. And as we dive into selfishness, self-centeredness, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you sort of what's my experience with the difference between selfishness and self-centeredness, just as a place to start and to dive in with what we're talking about. So with selfishness, a simple way to define it is how I act and behave in the world. And so what that looks like is when I steal your car, sleep with your husband, and pee on your carpet, that is selfish. Bear with me with this. And then self-centered is how I think or perceive. So I'm worried you don't like me because I did all those things. That's self-centered. See what the difference is? And I'm just kidding. I would never do any of that. It was linoleum. And welcome everyone. We're just on 62. Just in case you're trying to figure out where we're at, 62, first paragraph. We're talking selfishness, self-centeredness. So, selfish is, for me, how I act and behave, and self-centered is how I think and perceive. So it says that we think is the root of our troubles. I'll just throw it out there. It's, again, rude for the big book to be doing the spiritual jujitsu that it's got going on right now. I don't know about you, I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'll be frank, at first I don't think alcohol is my problem. Now, if you're like me, I come to Alcoholics Anonymous and he is my problem. And if he could just get his stuff together, and my family's my problem, and my job's my problem, and they're my problem, if they get off my back, I'd be able to drink like a lady, all that, they're my problem. But then you guys do a little razzle dazzle, and it's like, okay, maybe alcohol is my problem. But then you do a whole nother like judo flip, jujitsu move, and wouldn't you know it, alcohol is not my problem. My problem is I have an obsession of the mind, a thought that happens when I am as sober as I am today, that takes me back again and again and again to the first drink, despite the fact that I know it is ruining my life. That is the problem. And it's like, whoa, okay, that's my problem, fair enough. And then, what do we got? We got this whole other one, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Wait, what? I thought it was him. I thought it was alcohol. I thought it was the mental obsession. And so the crux of our problem is the obsession of the mind. But it is imperative that I understand what is fueling that obsession of the mind. And that is the spiritual malady. Now, the spiritual malady is a conscious sense of separateness from God. And that is the root of my troubles. What is driving me, what is fueling my alcoholism. The root is the depth of the plant. It is the depth of it. So the depth of this problem is selfishness and self-centeredness. Welcome, I'm glad you're here. And that's what we treat. Now I'm describing this selfishness, self-centeredness as the spiritual malady. And we might be like, hey girl, I thought the spiritual malady was the restless, irritable discontent. I thought the spiritual malady was like those bedevilments on page 52. That can't make a living, a feeling of uselessness, a prey to misery and depression. And what I will point out is the spiritual malady is that conscious pain that I experience from a conscious sense of separateness from God. And it is something that human beings experience. It is not limited to alcoholics. It is not limited to people like us. I always make the joke, if you don't believe that non-alcoholics are spiritually sick, go spend some time in traffic. Not playing in traffic. I'm not telling you to do that, although I have been told to play in traffic a time or two. Go to your HOA, your PTA, you will find some spiritually sick non-alcoholics. But as an alcoholic, I am trying to treat that conscious sense of separateness from God with a drink. Because that drink gives me that feeling that I'm after. And so I've got to treat that. And again, selfishness, self-centeredness. Girl, we're talking about pain. What do you mean, Paige? That's the root of my troubles. Well, do you guys know what it's like to stub your toe? And you know when you stub your toe, that is all that you can think about. You know, when we're in pain, all I can do is I think about my pain. And I operate from and act from that place of pain. You know, you suddenly stub your toe and you maybe say words that you wouldn't say almost any other time. You have you exclaim things you would not exclaim. You know, you just caught your hand in something or you hurt yourself and somebody's like, oh, what's wrong? And you snap at them, right? We're operating from pain. And self-centeredness is the lens through which I look when I'm separated from God. And self-centeredness is the way in which I act when I am separate from God. And what I do not realize at this point, but I come to find out as I work these 12 steps, is when I act in selfishness and I see the world through self-centeredness, that fuels the selfishness and that fuels the self-centeredness. And that sense of disconnect grows. The more I'm in self, the more I'm in self. And so that's what we've got to treat. And I've got to treat that conscious sense of separateness from God. And I do that by relieving that selfishness and self-centeredness through the rigorous application of the 12 steps. So I'm disconnected from God, and that disconnect from God leaves me wrapped up in the bondage of self. And the 12 steps are to clear away the bondage of self so that I can live in conscious contact with God and experience that spiritual awakening. Hopefully that makes sense. I hope I have explained it an appropriate amount and not over-explained it, because there's nothing worse than when you're like, I understand the concept, and then they keep talking, and you're like, I understand it no more. It's gone. She gone. All right. So that is the root of our troubles. It goes on to say, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. And I'm going to throw something out. I'm not going to ask you to do a show of hands because I'm doing a little bit of spiritual jujitsu or judo, so you don't got to cop to nothing. But is there anyone here, again, you don't have to raise your hand, is there anyone here who would ever experience that? I've taken my will back. Now don't raise your hand because I'm going to do a thing. Oh, that's lovely of you. I've got some news. I don't think you took your will back. So bear with me. Because what happens is I think, okay, I can't really do a good job with this whole alcoholism thing. Clearly that's not going to work. But let me manage my relationship or my job or my finances or this area of my life. Let me get and in my case, grubby little paws all over it. And I think, okay, I'm gonna drive the bus with this. Or I think, you know what, I'm just going to drive it a little bit. How bad can it be? But I want to point something out. I'm not the one driving the bus. Who is driving? What is driving? What is driving is 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. There's a madman at the wheel. That is who is running my life. When I am on self-will, it's not me. It's really not. It's what's running my life is 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. That is who is running my life. Girl, that bus is about to go off a cliff. We are in trouble. Like, it's not good. It's not good. So that is who's driving. It's not me. And we talk about fear, those 100 forms of fear. I'm running from fear. And here's my experience. Everything that I do to try to overcome my fear makes that worse. And when we get to fears in our 4th step, we're going to have a look at that. And then self-delusion. I can't see reality. Self-seeking, and that's me trying to get what I think I need from the world outside of me to make me okay. But here's the news. It's not enough. It's never enough. Bear with me. If instant gratification was so good, why does it only last an instant? Oh, oh, we're just rude, because I love me some instant gratification, give it to me quick. Right? And then self-pity, and I describe that self-pity as that, it's that warm blanket that I can just envelop myself in. But it starts getting a little tight. It turns into a noose. That little warm blanket of self-pity that begins to absolutely kill me. So it goes on to say, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. I'm going to point something out. We step first. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation. I was out there minding my own business, just driving my bus by myself. And what? And they came out of nowhere and hurt me. Keep in mind, I'm careening off a cliff. But it says, but we invariably, which means pretty well always, find that at some time in the past we have made a decision based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. So we come here and we see our fellows' retaliation, and when we get to inventory, we're going to see the retaliation and we're going to put that in column 2. But where we need to get and where we need to see is that we stepped first. And if you're writing in your book, we can make a little note right beside this paragraph, resentments, column 4. We're going to come back to this. There's some beautiful prompts in resentments, but I always find it helpful to come back to this prompt. Where did I make a decision based on self? A selfish, self-centered, self-seeking decision that put me in a position to have this resentment in the first place. So we're going to come back to this. And I want to share about that. I took my will back. I started driving the bus again. I have this metaphor. And this is what it is like when I am sitting, and I don't say sitting in the God chair, because I'm not really sitting in the God chair. It's like I strung together a little director's chair and I painted God on it, but I got no authority and I'm just sitting there trying to run it. So I talk about how it's more sitting in the delusion of the God chair, because we were just talking about last week how I'm the director. Girl, you are tree number 3. Get over yourself, right? And there is a director. The director is directing. I just need to get out of the way. But this is a really good metaphor of what it is like to live my life on self-will. And it's going to work if you either were of a generation where you grow up playing video games, or you had children who were of a generation where they were playing video games. Now, this is a thing that only works when there's enough of an age gap. But you will have the older sibling that will be playing the video games on the video game controller. And the younger sibling, what do they want? They want a turn. And so the older sibling gives them a controller that is not plugged in. No judgment if you've done that as a parent. No judgment. And that is what it is like when I am living my life on self-will. I'm the younger sibling with a controller that's not plugged in, but it looks like I'm doing things. I'm pushing the buttons. I'm moving the joystick. I'm hitting the trigger buttons. I'm doing the stuff. And it's so frustrating because look at all that I'm doing. But the world does not seem to be responding because my controller isn't plugged in. So that's what it's like when I'm living on self-will. All right, we're going to call us all out some more. I'm not doing it. The book's doing it. But if we want to take some inventory on me, oh goodness, I will help you with that. So it says, so our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making? What? What is this noise? They arise out of ourselves? And the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot? No, that can't be true. I don't think so. Though he usually doesn't think so. That's one of my favorite setups. Also, if you're looking for the name of a punk rock or a metal band, Self-Will Run Riot. Welcome to the stage. Self-Will Run Riot. I got little sticker designs for that because I think I'm funny, right? though he usually doesn't think so. And when I came to AA, I did not think selfishness, self-centeredness, that was the root of my troubles. I could see it in all of you. Yeah, you guys are struggling with selfishness and self-centeredness, but I don't see how this could apply to me. And welcome, we're on page 62. Not me. But here's the thing, I misunderstood what selfishness and self-centeredness looked like. I thought selfishness and self-centeredness looked like that boisterous grandiosity. I'm so great, I'm so important, let me run the show, and I'm thinking about me and my amazing, wonderful schemes and plans and designs. No, that's not it. Selfishness, self-centeredness can look like that, but more commonly, and in my life, here's what it looks like. I'm the biggest piece of garbage that ever lived. Nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I suck. I'm the worst. And what am I doing? I'm centered still upon me. And it might be I'm centered upon I'm not enough. I'm not worthy enough. No one cares. All my insecurities and operating from that place of insecurity, but it is still me rooted on me and me trying to overcome that with my own power. And it doesn't work. And so what we're seeing is self-will run riot. We tend to be extreme examples of that. Maybe a little, actually talking about the spiritual malady. I talk a lot about, how the spiritual malady is not limited to alcoholics. But I really do believe that alcoholics are a little like spiritual canaries in the mine. And in the 1800s, 1700s, what they would do is when they were mining for coal, and I know some of you guys have heard this. Some of you guys heard this on Saturday. Didn't plan on making this talk again. Here we go. But when we would go and go into the coal mines, what the miners would do is they would bring with them canaries. Because canaries, what they'll do is they'll chirp and chirp and chirp and chirp and chirp. And if you don't know a lot about birds, that's reasonable. I don't know why I know so much about birds. I won't go into a detailed discussion of the roseate spoonbill, but let me tell you. But you take a canary, and birds are incredibly sensitive to gas. Like if you own a pet bird, you can't clean your oven, and you got to be very careful about things like scented candles and aerosols because they're very, very sensitive to gas. And so if you were in a coal mine and the miners that would be working, if they would hear the sound of chirping stop, it would be a sign to get out of the mine. And I feel like as alcoholics, we're not the miners. We don't have the grace that non-alcoholics have to live in that conscious sense of separateness from God. But we are the canaries, consciously sensing this sense of separateness, that something is wrong, and it's this warning sign. Aren't we a warning sign to the people around us who are absolutely baffled at our behavior? And we've stopped chirping. And so when we talk about an extreme example of self-will run riot, that's what's fueling it. That's what's fueling it. And I need to be free of it because my life depends on it. But that is me getting ahead of myself. After a tangent, I would never. I'm always known for my focus. So, above everything. So more important than anything else. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must. I love that. Lisa, she updated her, the thing with the God chair. Perfect. Love it. Amazing. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. So it is of vitally importance to get rid of this selfishness. But if you're like me, you have probably tried. And I tried to get rid of self with self. That doesn't work. I tried to put self between self, and there was nothing I could put between me, and I was stuck with me, and I was wrapped up and dying in the bondage of self. So it says we must, or it kills us. And that's a stark warning. because I can't continue to live the way in which I am living. Because keep in mind, to be an alcoholic is to be doomed to die an alcoholic death. My step one, our step one, as we were talking about, is not I can never drink again. That step one is I will drink again. And it's going to take a miracle for me to get sober. And so if I continue to live in self, wrapped up in the bondage of self, with this conscious sense of disconnect, I will drink again. So what I need is I need to get free of self. We must, or it kills us. And this is important. God makes that possible. I'm not doing it. God is doing it. I am going to take a course of action that, let's be frank, I don't think applies to me. And I don't want to do, and I don't particularly like or care for, but I am going to take this course of action. And then what's going to happen? God's going to do the heavy lifting. God is going to do it. All I need to do is show up and take this course of action. And I promise God will do for me that which I cannot do for myself. And that means removal of the mental obsession. That means the removal, we'll talk about this, defects of character, same as shortcomings, the conduct in my relationships that I can't live up to. God will take from me my resentments, my fears, and at this point what we're saying is God can relieve me of this self that is killing me. And still, if I'm like, no, let me do it, let me get in there, let me get my grubbing little paws on self, let me do. It says, and there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. I need God, and how I get God's aid, again, is the 12 steps. That's how we let God work in our lives. It says, many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore. Listen, I got things galore, but they're pretty much defects galore. But what is a moral and philosophical conviction? We're speaking about them in step 2. And those are things that are like, that we believe in and values that we hold tight, that are good, but I can't live up to them. I always kind of point to the 4 agreements as examples because they're incredibly virtuous, wonderful things to esteem towards. Like, don't take things personally. Always try your best. Be impeccable with your word. And I always forget at least one, mostly 2. But I can't do that on my own, right? Don't take things personally. Have you been to an AA business meeting? If you haven't, come. Somebody will tell you their opinion about how the coffee needs to be made. And, oh, can you believe that? Or, that thing, this is another example of what self-centeredness looks like. When you walk into a room and 2 people are talking and then you walk in and they suddenly stop? They were talking about me. It's about me and it's not good things. Immediately. And I can't live up to that moral and philosophical conviction of don't take things personally. I can't do it. I don't have that power. I don't have that power. So it's the power is, and we were speaking about this, a power is not in an ideal. The power is in God. And a higher power, creator, spirit of the universe. And I need to build a relationship to establish a connection with that power. And then I'm able to not be a giant jerk face and, not take things as personal and not be so sensitive. Oh, by the way, while I'm ruining everyone's day, I'm going to ruin your day with this one. I'm so sorry. Because I used to go around and I used to be like, I'm so sensitive. And God bless her, she's still a member of my home group, lovely woman. I remember the time she said this. It was we were doing a subcommittee at a Humpty's, and I made a joke of, it's a restaurant in Canada. I don't know if they still exist. Anywho, I'm just painting the picture in my mind. You guys don't need the visuals. It's like a Denny's or a Waffle House, but with less fights. I won't tell my Waffle House story. But I'm like, I'm so sensitive. And she's like, sensitive is just a synonym for self-centered. Oh no, rude. Because what did I mean when I said I was sensitive? I didn't mean I was crying at dog food commercials, or you know what I mean? I wasn't crying at I I was taking things that weren't about me and making it about me. Just a synonym for self-centered. Rude. Rude. Please keep coming back, despite how rude this big book study has been. So, many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. Again, it's reiterating, I can't reduce self with self. I can't do it. I can't overcome it. And again, we had to have God's help. We had to have God's help. I need God to overcome self. And so what we're deciding to do is, am I going to let God work in my life? Am I going to, and how do I do that? Because like sometimes we talk about things and it's vague and nebulous, and I want to make it as clear as humanly possible. It's one of those things, you ever go to a meeting, and not you guys, you guys would never have the same problem over and over again that you share about at the meeting and take the meeting hostage. Not you guys, where you do that with your sponsor. No one here would ever do that, but I've done that. And then you get like a disgruntled, I was going to say gruntled, but a disgruntled old timer that's like, why don't you let go and let God? And then because you don't want to look stupid, maybe you guys don't relate to this, you say, that's a great idea, absolutely. But, or to your sponsor, you don't want to be like, yeah, I don't want to admit to looking stupid. And so when alone at home, it's like, yeah, but how do I do that, right? So it's, how do I let go, let God? How do I let God work in my life? How do I turn my will and my life over to God? That is the sole purpose of the 12 steps. How we are going to reduce selfishness and self-centeredness, how we are going to be free of selfishness and self-centeredness, is working these 12 steps as a way of life like my life depends on it. Just going to make that super, super clear. So, we had to have God's help. This is how we let God work in our lives. It says, this is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. So right here, we can make a little note that we are fired. We are absolutely fired. I'm just going to see if I can bring it up. I don't think. I'll grab that one. Yeah, I'll grab that one. It's an old one. So here's what I do with sponsees. Is at this point in the book, I give them their pink slip. This is for Rob. And if you're like, which Rob? I'm like, I don't know. I've worked with a lot of Robs. Regardless, I didn't pre-grab a pink slip. So for them, I'll make them their pink slip. And for those of you who are staying up late in the UK, it's a P45. This is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. We are fired, absolutely fired from the management position of our lives. I do have blank ones of these if you ever need. And how I make it out is like notice of termination of employment, and the reason for termination, gross incompetence. See step 1 for further details. Because if you're like, girl, fired from the management position of my life, that seems a little harsh, don't you think? I don't know if you guys saw, my life was unmanageable. In step 1, I copped to that. I was able to admit my life was unmanageable. Who was managing it? Me. I took my life and I managed it into the ground. I managed it into an unmanageable situation. It was on fire. My life was a dumpster on fire. And it was careening off a cliff. That was my life. Man, if I have managed anything as poorly as I manage my life, I ought to be fired. This is for the guys in the UK. If I managed the Nando's as poorly as I manage my life, I ought to be fired. I really wish I had an Australian chain restaurant in my brain, because then I would mention it and I'd feel so cool and slick. I know you have McDonald's, but that doesn't feel like, a Macca's. Go get a Macca's. I know how you like to abbreviate. Right? The McDonald's is on fire. It's on fire. It is not salvageable if I am in the director's chair. It's not working. So I got to get fired. So that's it. Pink slip, fired, done. But I need a new manager. Somebody's got to manage my life. Somebody's got to, the Nando's of my soul needs to be managed. Not my weirdest reference today, to actually be quite honest with you. So it says, next we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our capital D director. So who is going to manage our life? God. And just as we were talking about last week, I'm just going to be tree number 3. I'm going to let the director be the director, and I am going to follow direction. That's what I'm going to do. And so it goes on. He is the principal. We are his agents. Now, this is not what this means, but this is how I like to read it. I gotta be an agent? Agent for God? Pew pew! Double O Paige, agent for God. Pew pew! Where's my super secret spy gadgets? Where's my night vision goggles? I would like a jetpack. Please and thank you. I don't need an Aston Martin jetpack. Thank you. Which I'll need because I'm going to hear I got to launch, right? So, spoilers, at the very bottom of 63, I'm going to launch. And I'm like, yeah, that's what that jetpack is for. All right, Double O Paige, secret agent Paige, going on her super secret spy mission. What is she doing? And then it's going to tell me house cleaning. Oh, man. Oh, man. I wanted to be an agent. We do get to be an agent for God. But I will just say that's not quite what principal and agent means. But I just think it's fun to say it that way. So an agent is somebody who is legally allowed to act on behalf of a principal. So imagine that we are going to take this position where we're working for this power, and we are a representative of God wherever we go. Oh, that's going to change how some of us drive. You know, I'm not calling anyone out. I don't have a driver's license, so I'm not bothered. But you know, when people are in your lane, spoilers, it's not your lane, it's the lane. Just ruining days over here. That's what this study has been tonight. Just casually ruining everyone's day. Thank you for coming. So, acting on behalf of God. And it says, he is the Father, we are his children. And these are just different ways in which I can orientate myself to this power. And if one of these does not jive, does not work for you, don't worry, get rid of it. I grew up without a father. I never had one in my life, and clearly have some issues. But the takeaway from that is, if you could imagine the type of father that you would want, maybe you did have a good relationship, maybe you had a horrific relationship, but imagine an ideal relationship with a father. Or if you're like, I'd rather not, don't. Go be a double agent for God. Pew, pew. We got different options. But imagine the relationship that you would want to have with your father. One that you, maybe a strong, confident, that person or that power that you would go to when you were scared, that would take care of things for you, that would come and fix your spiritual flat tire. You know what I'm saying? That ideal relationship where I'm not running the show, but this is where I go to for peace and comfort and support. What about that? And it says, so he is the director. We are the actors. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the father. We are his children. These are just different ways we can orientate. We don't have to get hung up on whichever one, but just that idea that God's running it and I'm just going to work for God. And again, how do I work for God? I'm going to work the 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. That's all. That's as simple as it needs to be. And it says most good ideas are simple. Simple ideas. You rock and roll. And it says, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. Now, if I was better prepared, I'm not. I might show you a picture of an arch. I won't. We're going to have to do it in our mind. If you imagine an archway, the keystone is the stone that is right at the center of the arch. And what that stone does, that is the stone that holds all the tension, which holds the arch in place. And so I have this, every time I tell this story, I have a feeling that's a picture of an archway in the chat. So if you need to see an arch, I have a feeling that's what that is. If it's not, my bad. But when I was very little, I went to Montessori, and so we had this like where you built an arch, and I really always messed it up, which is a perfect metaphor for my life. But that was the one that you would put in place last because it would hold the tension of the arch and hold it in place. So this idea that I am no longer in charge, God's going to be in charge, and I'm going to work for God, that is the simple idea that holds all the tension in Alcoholics Anonymous, in these 12 steps. And so often in this book and in this work, we will call back to the third step decision. It's like, hey girl. And that's how the book says it too. It goes, hey girl, with that snap. I don't know. But it's a callback to this decision, because this decision is a big decision. But I want to point out, it is the arch, not just an arch, but an arch through which we're going to pass to freedom. It does not look like it if I am coming to the third step for the first time in my life. I do not, let's be real. We don't come to the third step and we're like, oh, I am sure freedom abounds from this decision. What a wonder. Nothing appears to be more freeing than inventory and amends, you know? Like that's the thing. Is at this point, I don't know. But those of us who have done this work, there is nothing more freeing than inventory and amends. Do you know what I mean? Like when you're doing it and you've actually been doing it, you know what it feels. Pre-amends, we were talking about this at the earlier Big Book study. Pre-amends, ooh, that'll get the digestive issues going. You'll get things moving. It's not feeling good. We got the twisties and the resisties. Post-amends, it's like, it's the best, right? I don't know this yet. But what we're going to do in step 3 is just hold on that idea that what is on the other side is freedom. And we will experience the freedom. So it says, when we took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. So when we sincerely took such a position, what does that look like? What that looks like, I'm just realizing, man, I didn't do a lot of the prep work that I like to do to bring up things to share. Let me see if it's going to come. No, I'll have to. So such a position, the position is working these 12 steps as a way of life. And the result of that is remarkable things will follow. It says, we had a new capital E employer. So we are working, we're not running the show anymore. Being all powerful, he provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. And, so what are we talking about? So for me, this I like to use as the little, there it is. There it is. I brought up the thing that I'm going to bring up later. I was trying to do that subtly so that nobody could tell I was trying to multitask. And I'm sure you all were like, yeah, we can see what you're doing, Paige. And you're not doing it well. I barely have the attention to do one thing at a time. But I got to be spiritually employed. I need spiritual employment. I clearly am not made for management. And we got a manager, but I need spiritual employment. So I describe this as the employment contract. So if you've ever had a job, and to be honest, I don't think I've ever signed an employment contract. Maybe at one job, but at many of them I have not, which is scandalous. But before you go to work, most people, if you're working at a reputable job, which I don't think I was working at many of those, you will sign an employment contract. And on that contract, it's going to give you some information. The first piece of information is it's going to give you what your job is. Your job title, your job responsibilities. It's going to ask certain things of you, like show up on time every day and do your job. Lame, but it's going to ask us to do that. And it does that in this employment contract. It says, if we kept close to him and performed his work well. So that is my job responsibilities. So what is asked of me is to keep close to God. How do I keep close to God? Of course, prayer, of course, meditation. But ultimately, how I keep close to God is I work these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. That's how I keep close to God. And what is God's work for somebody like me? Love and service. Love and service. To all his kids, especially his drunks. Because I was made specific to go hang out and help God's drunks, but all his kids. To show up and be of love and service in everything that I do. That is my job responsibility. Now let's go back to the employment contract. And in the employment contract, it also tells me what I get paid. Money. Like if I get hourly or salary, or if I get, what is it in the United States called? 401k. Sorry, I just got real Canadian and I was like an RRSP. And I'm like, nobody here knows what I'm talking about if I call it that. 401k or retirement. Or this is how we can tell I'm getting a little older. I'm like, ooh, do we get some dental coverage? What about eyeglass coverage? Exciting. Also vacation days, but let's go back to the dentistry thing. So we get paid, and our benefits and our bonuses and all that sort of information, not bonuses, but you know what I mean, is in the employment contract. And that is in this employment contract too. And it's right here. He provided what we needed. So everything that I need will be provided to me. I have a friend who makes a point, not what I want. And there's been times where I go to her and do a 10-step or tell her what's going on in my life, and she's like, "Oh, girl, didn't know you needed that. Yikes!" What I need and what I want is different, often very different. But everything that I need will be provided for and will be taken care of. Everything that I need, not what I want, because I still don't have a jetpack. I should not have a jetpack. I know I'm joking, but just in case somebody's like, "Ooh, I am not safe." Yeah, I'm not safe to have a jetpack. I know my limitations. All right. And so what we're going to do is we're going to sign the employment contract. And that's what we're doing in step 3. And just like when you sign an employment contract, you then have to show up to work on Monday. That's the expectation. You sign the contract, they don't give you the 401k. They don't give me my dental coverage. I got to show up and go to work. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to sign the employment contract with the 3rd step prayer, and then we go to work. And now what follows are what is called the 3rd step promises. But the 3rd step promises don't happen at step 3, because the 3rd step is simply a decision. These promises happen as I take action and follow through on my decision by working these steps. And if you're like, "I don't believe you," that is reasonable. I have been calling all of us out a whole bunch today in this part of the book. So if you're over my stuff, I don't blame you. But it says established on such a footing. So to be on this footing of following through with the employment contract. So not just when I make a 3rd step decision, when I am established in this way of life, that's what we're talking about. It says we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. And I have a sponsee who sent me one time this meme with a cat that was like, "Wait, why would I want to be less interested in my little plans and designs?" Well, which I thought that was top shelf AA humor, by the way. But the reality is they don't work. My plans and designs don't work. Doesn't work. And it says more and more we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. And at this point in the steps, I don't know this yet. But what is true is the more that I give to life, the more that quality feels abundant. Bear with me with this. Whenever I have, and believe me, I have some times where life kicks my butt. And I have times where I'm riddled with insecurity, or somebody's been not very kind to me, or something like that. And what I have found is that if I give that which I feel I do not have, it becomes abundant. So if somebody is mean to me, oh, you better believe I'm going to be nice as heck to all of you and that person. But you know what I mean? If somebody's mean, I'm going to be kind. If I feel like who I am is not enough, ooh, bear with me. You're getting your tires pumped. You're just going to know how great you are all over the frickin' place. Can't do nothing about it. Ha ha. Well, I mean, you can. All of my tire pumping is consensual. You can be like, please don't pump my tires, and I won't. But, you know, if I give that which I feel I do not have, it becomes abundant. Because that which I'm getting, I'm actually getting from God. And so when I become less interested in my little plans and designs, because God's got those, God's the director, it's not my business how it goes. But if I show up focused on what can I give, I receive far more than I could have ever imagined. And this is another example of when I talk about this whole deal is experiential. It is ineffable. I have to do it to experience it, because if we have not done it, I seem like I'm out of my mind. And this is an important point to notice, it's important for me to make the note that two things can be true. I am out of my mind and technically correct on that as well. Two things can be true. And so it's experiential. As we felt new power flow in, and I love that it is a flow in. Flow in, because it's not my power. As we enjoyed peace of mind, I will tell you, I did not have peace of mind when I got here, and I was not enjoying what was happening in my mind. As we became as we discovered we could face life successfully. I could not face life when I got here. Life was too much. Life was beyond becoming impossible. Man, I tell you, life was impossible in the 3rd grade, let alone, in my teens, in my 20s. Life was impossible. So, but now it's we could face life successfully as we became conscious. And again, that conscious is that with knowing, having that with knowing experience of God, His presence. We began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn. And the first person I heard say this was Terry. I do a big book study with him on Fridays. He probably stole it from somebody, but I give credit. So the first time I heard this was from Terry. And he said, for something to be reborn, something needs to die. And what needs to die is my ego. And that's what that's selfishness, self-centeredness. That's what we're talking about when we say ego, by the way. The selfishness, self-centeredness, that part of me. To be reborn, something needs to die. And I'll share this with you. It was something, I don't know if it'll share big enough on the screen so that y'all can see it. I might not. But my friend Glenn, and he is the most lovely human being. Again, I give credit. He is the most lovely human being. He made this diagram. So if you guys remember where we compared the bedevilments with the 9th step promises, my friend Glenn made these comparisons between the step 3 and the step 9 promises. So when it talks about we became less and less interested in ourselves, it talks about how that feeling of uselessness and self-pity we will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. And when it talks about how more and more we became interested in what we could contribute to life, it talks about in step 9, we will see how our experience can benefit others. Again, the lose interest in selfish things and our self-seeking slip away. When it describes being able to face life successfully in the step 3 promises, that intuitively knowing how to handle situations which used to baffle us, as well as that feeling of uselessness and self-pity disappearing. When we talk about losing our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter, we can see how that lines up with we will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace, as well as that fear of people and of economic insecurity leaving us. And when we talk about being reborn, we see that a new freedom, a new happiness. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves, and where it talks about our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. And I didn't come up with that. That was Glenn, and he is just delightful. Not that Terry isn't. Terry's also delightful. I feel like I didn't give enough tire pumps to Terry. He's the best. They're all great. So Those are the third step promises. And why I was pointing out how they tie in with the ninth step promises, and we'll see how they can tie in with other promises, is they happen when I start actually doing this thing, not when I decide to do it. Not that the decision cannot have a powerful effect, but it's not gonna have a permanent effect unless at once I follow it by my fourth step. So it says we were now at step 3. I'm ready, because it's the decision. And the prayer is signing of the employment contract. I'm making this decision. It's like it's pen to paper. I'm going to do this. That's what the prayer is for. It says many of us said to our capital M maker as we understood him. Keep in mind, understand means to know through experience. And at this moment, I probably won't know this power through experience, but I'm going to build the experience through these 12 steps. It says, God, I offer myself to thee. So God, I'm giving me to you. Take me, bud. I can't do it. And I have to verify this. I'm going to share this with you. I heard it in a book that I was listening to, but I don't know if it's true. I heard that back in the day, did I see it on a TikTok? I can't remember. It got into my noodle somewhere, and I got to fact check this. So I will give you this piece of information, and somebody will let me know if it's incorrect. I heard that there was a period of time where the these and thous were actually informal language, and more language that you would use with a friend. I have to fact check that. I don't know if that's true, but I do like the idea, because oftentimes we'll read thee and thou and we think it's that very formal, but we're building a relationship. And so I love that idea of if it being a more personal, sort of language. So it's that idea of, God, I give myself to you. And it says to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. So God, I'm giving all of me to you so that you can build with me whatever you want and do with me whatever you want. And one of the things, if we're struggling, I often suggest with sponsees what I call a modified third step prayer. So like if I'm struggling with a family member, not that you guys are struggling with a sponsee or struggling with like a certain defect or a certain habit or so, what we can say is we can, for the first part of the prayer, we can throw that thing in. So God, I offer this problem to you to build with and do with as thou wilt. And then the prayer comes back, relieve me of the bondage of self. So God, I offer my partner to you to build with and do with as thou wilt. God, I offer my job to you to build with and do with as thou wilt. Whatever that thing that we're struggling with, God, I offer it to you. You take it. It's none of my business. Grubby paws. I'm going to keep them over here. To build with and do with as thou wilt. And it says, relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. And that is what 4 through 9 is for. Steps 4 through 9 is going to relieve me of the bondage of self. That like I am drowning in self, and it's going to relieve me, and not because that sucks. Relieve me of the bondage of self, because the bondage of self sucks for a real one. Relieve me of the bondage of self so that I can better do thy will. So God, take away this bondage of self. Take away my selfishness, my self-centeredness, so I can better be of service to those around me. Do what you would want me to do, God. That's what it's saying. That's, again, why we're talking about those orientations between me and God. God's in charge. God's running the show. Whether I let God or not, God's running the show. But God's running it. That's what we're talking about. And it says, take away my difficulties. And not because they're difficult, chicken difficult. That's because I have my niece, when she was little, she'd go, it's easy breezy, lemon squeezy. And I would say it's easy breezy, chicken breezy. Because she'd go, Auntie Paige. And I'm like, chickens, they would like the cool breeze. They'd enjoy that. But not because it's difficult, frickin' difficult. And I don't want to deal with my difficulties. No, God, take away my difficulties. Relieve me of these difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. So take away my difficulties so that I can help other people. Take away my difficulties so that I can help other people. And this is how we help them. Help them of capital T, capital P, capital T, capital L, capital T, capital W. Now keep in mind, capitalizations, we're pointing to that power. We're pointing to God. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help, of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. May I do your will always. And so that's what it's saying. God, you know what? I'm going to give you me, all of me. Just take me, take my life, take my problems, take my struggles, so that I can better do what you would have me do. So I can best serve you. And so it says, we thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. Abandon. This whole thing is about me outpouring more and more of myself to the unconditional love that is God. And if I am struggling with that idea of like, I don't know if I can abandon myself to this power. If you remember on page 59, when it says we asked, that's a prayer. On page 59, God, I ask your protection and care with complete abandon. If I'm struggling, I can ask for that help. Because this is about me diving in. And abandoning myself to this power does not look like I'm taking my time and wading in. I'm jumping. I'm just about there. I'm going to take that last paragraph and then I'm going to zip it. It said, we found found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person. Now, when I'm working with sponsees, I always add my commentary. So this is how I do it with sponsees. I said, we found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person. That's me, such as our wife. That's not me. Best friend, that does not need to be me. Or spiritual advisor, there's me again. But it is better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. Not me, not misunderstanding. And it says the wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we express the idea, voicing it without reservation. So what I do with sponsees is we'll say the prayer together, and then I ask them to say it in their own words, because it's awkward and uncomfortable, and it is a leap of faith that they get to draw upon when we dive into the fourth step. But because I will not ask a sponsee to do something I haven't done, I will always offer, do you want me to do one first? And so I do that for them. It says, this was only a beginning. Oh man, that's not a laurel that I could rest upon. I gotta keep going. Rude. This was only a beginning, though if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once. And we'll leave it there and dive into step 4 next week.